this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Lowe's knows Sundays are for football, so tackle your home improvement projects by Saturday and earn your Sunday with great deals on LG and Bosch appliances, select Bounty and Swiffer cleaning products, and more. Then once your to-do list is done, get ready to kick back, relax, and enjoy the game. Shop in store or online now and earn your Sunday with help from Lowe's, official partner of the NFL.
Wasabi is purpose-built to free your business from skyrocketing storage costs and fees. Wasabi is the go-to provider for professional and collegiate sports teams around the world. Check out Wasabi's AI-enabled intelligent media storage, Wasabi Air, to the industry's only cloud storage service with triple protection against cyber criminals. Wasabi, driving innovation in data storage for up to 80% less than market competition. Try for free at wasabi.com. Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage, proud partner of the iHeart Podcast Network.
Alan Seslowsky is a fantasy sports video content manager and editor at Rotowire and the host of the Dynasty Hour on SiriusXM Fantasy Radio. He previously did work at Roster Watch. He's a high-stakes player, a win-now Dynasty manager, and he once got hacked on Twitter. These are his late-round perspectives. This episode is sponsored by DraftKings. We've partnered up with DraftKings again this year for Best Ball, and we've got a can't-miss offer on their biggest Best Ball contest ever. $20 million in total prizes. It's draft one, get one. Draft your team once, no weekly lineup management, and your top scorers start automatically each week, all season long. Download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app and sign up with promo code LATEROUND. Enter a lineup in the $20 million Best Ball contest for $25 and get a bonus ticket for a second entry. 2 shots at the title. Draft one, get one, only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
I don't like all the intro stuff. Welcome to my podcast. Yes, Hi, everyone. You know? I hate that.
Well, also, like, I've always done the cold open because I feel like every show just ends up going, hey, Alan, how are you today? And then you're like, good. How are you? And then it's just a minute and a half of that, and no one needs to hear that part.
And no one cares how you are. No one. I produce a lot of the video stuff over at Rotowire, and I tell these guys, no one cares about your golf trip until they care about, just get right to it. Like shock, our mutual colleague Sigmund Bloom does this, right? Like he comes in with a fantasy question, but
he does. Yes.
Yeah. And I love that. But also just talking about how intros are bad, and your intro is also elite level intro.
This is like next level stuff right now. Yes. I always go back to, I don't know if you've ever seen that one video from Pete Overzet from like 5 or 6 years ago, maybe even longer, but it's him, his back is to the camera. Okay. And there's this like, really like, there's like this like pretty extreme like rap going on in the background, like intro music. Cause that's how fantasy football shows are, right? Like they have this like really intense music. And then, Overzet's slowly turning his chair around and then he's staring at the camera and he's got this like really serious look. Like we got, this intense music is going on. And then all of a sudden he goes, welcome everybody to another episode of,
he's just good. It's almost like an SNL skit of a fantasy football open, but also you do a gazillion podcasts. Like I know you like everybody, you're a friendly guy, but that chit chat in the beginning of the podcast, it's uncomfortable, unnecessary. Let's get to it, man.
I agree. That's what the Late Round podcast was built off. It was just get people the information they need. We have other shows in the feed now, like we do the Late Round show where we have a little, but like I think that the other thing too is that I think that if your listener becomes aware that how things are structured, and then if they want to skip ahead. Like it's fine. Like that's no big. I think the bigger problem is when the expectations are not aligned with what the listener is expecting as they go into listening to a show of some sort, and then all of a sudden they're in the middle of like a really intense fantasy football conversation, and then they just start talking, like you said, about their golf trip or something,
or like about like the basketball game that this video that we're making is like fantasy football related. It's supposed to be relevant to someone in 6 weeks from now. No one's going to care about the NBA big game that you just saw. I mean, it's good for the moment. Yeah. So yeah,
but it was sweet. It was sweet. The finals, both finals, both the NBA and NHL finals were great in my opinion.
And now we're doing it. Now we're talking about something that no one's going to care about in 6 weeks from now.
We ruined this. All right. Well, let me first bring up, because we talked about this whenever you and I were chatting on a show a couple months ago, but we're in a wild dynasty league together where it's 10 analysts. This was started by some of the football guys. And there's 10 analysts, and it's a start 2, but also additional 2 super flex leagues. So you can realistically start 4 quarterbacks. And then, there's other flex pieces in there for running back, wide receiver. And I remember we had this conversation because we talked before the rookie draft happened. And I went with more a productive struggle year 1. You won the league. So let's everyone give kudos to Alan here. Clap, clap, clap.
There you go.
You won year 1, which I was really upset about because now
you helped me.
Yeah, I traded you Jalen Waddle for like a first last year because I knew that I just needed to start flipping some assets and stuff, which like you guys want to talk about, like, I'm not an analyst who like hides from moves or like hides from the way that I'm approaching things and stuff. I've always been a Jalen Waddle guy. It's just that you guys know that when you're in a dynasty league and you're in a clear, like, I need to just get some assets to hopefully, like, look better the next season and such. Like, I knew what I was doing year 1 in terms of the productive struggle. So I just flipped Jalen Waddle and I wanted some assets. And with this being a 4 quarterback league, if you will, I knew that some of those running backs and wide receivers would fall a little bit more, or I would just get a quarterback. And but you ended up winning, so I got a bad pick out of it.
Yeah, but 2 things happened there. When you traded me Jalen Waddle's arrow was pointing down, right? Like Miami hadn't been as good, and because you need to start 5 wide receivers in this particular league, I was like, listen, if I'm a top 2 or 3 team, at least this is, you have to push your chips in at some point, and nobody's giving me anything better than Jalen Waddle at that point. Yeah. I didn't think it was such a bad deal for you because remember, even if I win, JJ, it's still pick 110. It's not 112 in a 10-person league. Right.
It's 110, and then hopefully the quarterback class wasn't as putrid as it ended up being, and just in terms of like, because there was a little, it wasn't like we did this in like February or something like that. The problem for me is that Waddle ends up hitting, in my opinion, the right, I mean, like a 90 in terms of like what happened this offseason. It probably like a 90th percentile type outcome, just like a better environment. I'm doing stuff for my draft guide right now, and every middle round being any wide receiver after wide receiver 18 is how I generally define that. He hits like every trend. Like Jalen Waddle to me is a very, very interesting / potentially like big pick this year. Right. And so that coming together is what makes me, feel the way that I do right now.
And that's like one of the ways that I'll play Dynasty too. Like we haven't even seen the result of Jalen Waddle, but Jalen Waddle for some reason goes from like wide receiver 27 to wide receiver 19. I'm making those numbers up, but he has like a 10 spot boost, and that's without. So, and I think that's going to be part of our larger conversation today is like sometimes it's like not about what they're going to produce on the field, some of these guys. It's about what's their value, what can you turn them into? And you're right, Jalen Waddle is in a better situation because it's funny, like I see a lot of fantasy output on like social media saying how no one's going to draft Devon Achane because he's in a bad situation. Right. That's like one of the best running backs in the league right now. So those situations really do help boost a player's value. I don't even think the trade was that bad. It ended up being, in net, now that we know all the results, you get Eli Stowers in a 2 tight end league, right? That's who you ended up drafting at the 110.
I got, yeah.
I looked at it before. I figured we were gonna bring this up for some therapy. And, and I get Waddle, who's 27 going on 28. So it's not terrible. In a startup with a 2 tight end startup, I think that those guys would probably go in a similar place. And I know startup price is different than trade price, but it's not, I don't think it's going to be as bad as you think.
Look, I've had worse trades. That's for sure.
What's the worst one? Give me the worst one you've ever had.
Oh my gosh. I think the worst one, fortunately, I'm no longer like my team was really good, but it was just like becoming overwhelming to be part of the league. This was when Amon-Ra St. Brown came out, and I remember I knew that there was a chance I would get him in the late second, because that's where he was going in a lot of the rookie drafts that year. But before my pick even came up, I was in win now mode, and it was like, I don't know about you, but do you ever like when you're doing trades sometimes, do you ever have just like this, hopefully I can describe this well, this like 1 day window where you just happen to be like specifically high on that player or on that situation, and then literally like a day or two later, you're like, I don't know why I was so high in that moment.
Dude, it happens to me when I get off podcasts with smart guys like yourself. Like I was on a podcast with Thor Nystrom, and he talked me into Luke McCaffrey, and then I traded like a 2nd round pick to get him before. Yeah, so it happens I'm influenced just like anybody else is.
Right, sure. And so it was beginning of the 2nd round. I knew that there was a chance that Amon-Ra would be there, maybe even like mid-second. I was only like 3 or 4 picks away, and I just ended up trading my late second for the corpse of Julio Jones.
Oh, yeah. And that was the Amon-Ra pick.
It ended up being the Amon-Ra pick.
Yeah.
And there's also, I mean, I in a league that I'm still in, that this Dino Game Theory league, that Jax Falcone, if you will, he's run. I traded. It's a super flex league. My team is actually really good, but I ended up trading a couple years ago Dak in a super flex league, which I love. I've been a Dak backer, so that was like a kind of a play on my portfolio a little bit, but I ended up flipping him for Ayuk and picks. And Ayuk is just It was also, but that was also a moment where I'm like, there's a 3-day period where I was high on Ayuk as a player and as a situation without like fully looking into my research and knowing regression was going to come to some degree. I didn't expect this, of course. That was a trade with Justin Boone. So shout out Justin Boone for completely fleecing me in that. But yeah, I mean, like, what's your worst that you can remember?
Oh, it's an easy one. I can tell you in a second. But don't you like wake up in the middle of the night sometimes, like just randomly? And hey, listen, if these are the problems we're waking up thinking about, then things are going well, right? But I like it. It really gets me when I do something like so stupid too, like that. Like in hindsight, because the process is fine.
Of course.
By the way, I would say Brandon Ayuk still in a better spot than my Luke McCaffrey, who I traded.
That's true.
Right? The worst one I ever did was after Juju Smith-Schuster's that rookie or not, it was his second year where he broke out. Yeah, he was wide receiver 1 in dynasty rankings. I traded the farm for him, and those picks that I ended up trading away were like Barkley. It was like it was all the wrong stuff. And that one, it forced me out of a dynasty league. I had no like return from it. And I was like, you know what? I'll pay for the next guy to come in. Like I don't want to rebuild this team. Which by the way, people leaving dynasty leagues, which is a epidemic. I think there is a right way to do it as well. Are you in a lot of leagues? Do you get out of them?
Yeah, I mean, I've fortunately the last couple of years started to like, some of them just have collapsed, and some of them I'm just like, you know what, this is not nearly as active. I try to pick and choose like the more active ones to be part of, but yeah, I mean, like to me, if you're gonna leave, I'm like, yo, I'll pay the next like 3 years if you need. Like
you pay to get out.
I don't want to be an inconvenience to anyone, because that's just not the way that I roll. But yeah, I mean, like I think that there is a way to not be a jerk as you exit.
Yeah, I mean, you see it in the shallow time. Well, my busy and kids, and like he's like, dude, just say you don't want to be in the league anymore, because I see those guys end up in like 3 more startups like the next year.
Yeah. But yeah, our league, I was very happy that I got the 102 in that league though, because we were having this discussion where
in our league
4 quarterback, in the crazy 4 quarterback league, I was happy to have the 102 because I knew that worst case I was going to get Mendoza, but I thought Mendoza was going to go 101, and he did. So I ended up getting Jeremiah Love at the 102 in that league.
This format where you could start 4 quarterbacks, which again nobody plays, and I don't recommend it to anybody. It's a horrible format, but we're playing it.
Yeah, it's honestly more disgusting than anything that I've done in fantasy.
It's like not fun. It's only fun a little bit for me right now because I have Bryce Young as my QB4, right? Because I won, but it's not going to be fun in like a year and a half from now. But this is the only format where Jeremiah Love, the rookie running back in Arizona, goes second. That you get him at 2, because I've been in 38 drafts and it's never happened in anything.
Yeah.
Else, so.
Yeah. All right. So before we get into stuff, let's introduce you and your background a little bit, so folks know what you're all about, because this is the first time that you're hopping on Perspectives here.
Yeah. I'm Alan Seslowsky. I work over at Rotowire, and similar to you, man, I was just like a nut about fantasy when I was working a regular desk job. I used to, pretend I was working and just do all my fantasy drafts, right? Like I was to do the research. I would do Mock Draft Central back in the day. And then, I saw like an opening for something at like, I think it was, where did Jeff Ratcliffe used to work? Was it PFF back in the day?
He was at PFF for a minute.
Yeah, and he posted it, and I was like, it's my friend told me, he's like, you should go for that job. I was like, what the hell am I going to do at a job? Fantasy, that's not a real job. Right. So I asked a colleague of the new Jeff if he could put in a word for me or something like that. And he goes, no. He goes, why don't you come work for me over at Roster Watch? That was Byron Lambert.
Yeah.
So I used to be a caller to Byron's show, and that's how he knew me. And then he goes, come over. So I just started doing the article grind, the video grind, and then I do a lot of the video editing and all the podcast editing and stuff. And sure enough, I was able to pick up with Rotowire, man. And as someone interacted with their SiriusXM show, and I've been there for about 5 years now, doing all the video stuff, hosting a SiriusXM show for them, getting some good opportunities. But yeah, man, it's like I'm like 6 years into this thing, and I'm like you, man. You own a business doing this thing. I still I'm waiting for someone to take it all away and go back to horrible desk jobs. Like I never feel like it's going to last,
Yeah, no, I feel you. I feel you. It's a very lucky to be able to do this, day in and day out in my case, in gym, as I say, in gym shorts every day.
Oh my God. So when people ask you at, a gathering with your kids or whatever, a dinner party, when they say what do you do for a living? Do you always have trouble explaining it, or do you curtail it? Cause when you say fantasy football, they're what do you mean?
And then I'm like, I own a fantasy football company.
Right.
No, I usually tell people that I'm a podcaster first. And so I say that because that's become more generally accepted. And then that way they ask the question of what it's about, and then I can frame it in the way. Yeah. And so exactly. Depending on the demographic, depending on the person I'm talking to, and just if I broadly know what they might be into or not, then I can kind of curtail my answer based on if they say, what's it about? Then I can get into a lot of detail if I know this is a sports person, or, not in a lot of detail if not. But yeah, it's always been a pretty weird. I've gotten more and more comfortable though as I gotten older, because I think as you get older, you just don't care anymore.
You don't care, and plus you've made a real business out of it. And it's funny, I have a funny anecdotal story about you, JJ, because when I was just, and again, I still listen to every single podcast that I consume so much content. I like to know what other people are thinking too. I know that a lot of fantasy football content creators, I think you fall into this, is that you try to avoid it because you don't want it. Yeah, because and I understand it, because you don't want it to go into your process. Mm-hmm. I'm the opposite. I like to hear what everyone else says and kind of just, and by the way, this is not a process I recommend, but I still enjoy it. I really still enjoy listening to you, to Scott Connor and Jax Falcone and all those guys. Yeah. And I put it all together. But, when my wife actually discovered your podcast before I did, wow. and she plays a lot of fantasy football. She's she's a casual, but she plays every year and she used to always tell me about you. So I was like, and I don't want her to be telling me who's good. So I used to listen. I used to hate listen to you, JJ, nice. Because I was like, this is her thing, And so
I love it.
Yeah, so
I love it.
You are her favorite fantasy football podcaster. So she was more excited than anyone that I was coming to hang with you for a little bit.
That's awesome. I should have had her as a guest.
Probably more interesting, to tell you the truth. Yeah.
So is that how you sort of frame yourself as an analyst? Is that you're kind of aggregating and sifting through and kind of approaching things that way?
Totally, man. What's it called? There's people, everyone thinks they need to have their secret sauce. Now you have your model, your Zap stuff. You do that well. Other people watch film really well. I'm not going to do it better than them. I'm going to listen to what they say, but also I watch so much NFL football, and I play a ton of fantasy leagues. I play in the high stakes stuff. I play in, in the sleeper stuff with industry guys, and I'm able to kind of see the angles there. I think that's kind of my superpower. For example, I know everyone loves Casey Concepcion, the Browns. He's high in your model, isn't he?
Yeah, he was at least not far off from Lemon, but he was he was comfortably the wide receiver 4. Yeah,
right. Everyone likes him. He's the last pick in this rookie draft before it just goes off the rails for a lot of people. So I don't need to watch all that, and when I'm consuming all of, the best guys that do it, but I know if I draft him, I'm going to be able to do something with Casey Concepcion, especially if he has his first game is 6 for 80 or something like that. So that's basically been my process, is like you said, is bring it all together, trust my observations. Same way, when you go to a doctor, you don't do you don't have your own model for a doctor, right? You listen to all the research. Get all the facts.
That's what you think, buddy.
You have the late round medical advice.
Yeah. Late round mole checking. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Do you do proctology as well?
Yeah, let's not go there.
All right. But the same thing, like with food or anything else, you listen to what the people you trust, and then you form opinions on your own observations and basically how you know this game goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting. It kind of leads me to this next question of like what you think dynasty managers do wrong, because I've sort of, the way that I've framed, and what you're saying here really resonates with me, because I've always tried to frame to people that dynasty has sort of two big pillars. One pillar being production, obviously, because you need to score fantasy points, you need to attempt to win. But the other pillar is what you were talking about with the Jalen Waddle thing, and that is, you just want the market value to change. And is that something that you think dynasty managers still get wrong? I mean, that's something that you obviously have focused on a lot, just given all the consumption that you're doing.
Yeah, and I think that you're going to hate this answer because you are very rigid to your process. You trust it, and there's good reason. Yeah. I always say, like, I kind of make the joke, it's like a game of blackjack, right? Like, you would never, if the dealer's showing for those who play blackjack, the dealer's showing a 6, and you have to say a 5, a 15, right? Yeah. You would never hit on that, right? But if I hit on that, and follow me here, and I get 21, right? That was the wrong process, but I got the right result.
Sure.
Right. So I think that, and again, that's an extreme example, but I think that what dynasty managers do incorrectly is they're too rigid to their process rather than sometime measuring result. Now, there's always going to be outliers, right? Like Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think he was kind of an outlier in a little bit, right? Like he didn't go in any first rounds of rookie drafts, right? Now he's one of the top 5 dynasty assets. So being too rigid to the process, which again, it goes against like your religion over here. So
no, I mean, look, but I think like you can, you're not offending me at all, because I agree. Like I think that like as I'm talking to people and as I'm producing this content, it's very much hey, this is the way that I've approached things generally, and it's led to this. But if you're part of the Discord, or if you're, like I'm giving, I'm talking to people all the time about like, I don't want to say like my truer thoughts, because that's not really the case. Like I'm just letting them know like, hey, this is what I just did in a dynasty league, let's say, right? And they might say, oh, that goes against your rankings. I'm like, well, there's context that's necessary, right? Like there are certain things that, whether it is just portfolio management, sure, but also there are elements to your team that you might do something that you wouldn't otherwise do in another team. I agree. Like I think that the dynasty community has gotten to a point where they're more interested in having a flashy team that has a lot of value as opposed to having an actual. I was guilty of that for a long time, and it finally clicked with me a few years ago, and things have been like rolling since then, right? But I'm really good at. I mean, I've co-managed teams with people, and I still do, and I always say I'm very good at acquiring value, right? Because I think I have an edge with rookie drafts. I think I can make right moves more often than not. I'm good at acquiring that value. It's really when you push your chips in. That's the most difficult part for me in Dynasty.
Yeah, what you just said, I actually have a word for it. I've diagnosed it. It's called SRS, sexy roster syndrome.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've heard that before, but, people love putting the screenshots of their all young team on social media. And by the way, I almost like sometimes then you get the comment that says, what is this, a 6-man league? Right. That usually follows as well. But I think what some people do wrong is they don't look at where the redraft rankings and the dynasty rankings part, because as you know, dynasty rankings are very age centric, not skill centric. And, like it or not, a lot of these dynasty leagues probably have like a 3 or 4 year lifespan, right? It's like an NFL career. They don't last as long as you think you do. Some of them are going to last 10 or 15 years. Some are going to fold after 2 years. So I think there is an edge, and what a lot of dynasty managers make a mistake, I think you alluded to a little bit here, is undervaluing veterans that produce to accumulate value. And I do the same thing. But I'm okay, giving a pick for a Devontae, for a 32-year-old high producer, a Mike Evans, some of these guys. And look, that's what I did in our league.
Yeah, for you, is it more what I've found, because I know that the common thought is like mid-season trading, you as the person getting the veteran would hypothetically be overpaying, right? For whatever, that's like the general thought in the dynasty world, right? Is that, if you wait whenever trade deadlines are coming up or whatever the case may be, you're going to overpay for those guys. My more just like anecdotal experience has not necessarily been that when you're dealing with a dynasty manager who at least has been around the block, right? That is more willing to do deals and understands what they need to do if they're in the opposite situation that you are, similar to where we were last year, right? Like you coming to me and saying like, hey, or Jalen Waddle, whatever. And then I'm like, I like him, but I guess, I need to kind of do something here to make a move. Like I'm in a lot of leagues with Mike Leone, and Leone is the king. And I give him so much credit. He's a great dynasty player, but he's the king of just getting a deal done, even if he has a small loss, but he's acquiring, if he's rebuilding, he's acquiring picks and he's able to give up on some of these. And he understands that he might lose the deal, but in the long run, it's still a more beneficial move for him to make in that moment for his individual team. It's similar in like best ball when you get a falling quarterback value, but that quarterback just doesn't fit a stack whatsoever on your team. You can't just force the issue because that's not going to be good for your team. All you're doing is trying to gobble up a certain value when that's really not necessary to do at quarterback. So my question to you is that, as you're, going to win now and trying to build, a beastly roster to get that W for that year, have you found that statement and that general like idea of guys are way more expensive in season? Because the reason I say that is like, if you're going after the veterans, as you say, are you doing that more in season than out of season? Because obviously if you're doing it out of season, there's a lot more variance to what can happen to your roster, weeks 1 through 8. You might not even be competitive by the time, that you would be hypothetically making that move for the veteran.
See, JJ, all the topics that get my neck hair to stand up, man. This is good stuff right here. It's always cheaper to buy the 31-year-old, the 32-year-old wide receiver in March than it is in November, right? Like facts. So, but it's not that much more expensive. Sure, if you're trying to buy the 25-year-old that's off the big season, how old is Chris Olave now? Is he 26, something like that? Like that's going to be super expensive, right? Mike Evans, I keep going back to him. He's been always like the best example because he's always, Derrick Henry is another example, right? Because he's an outlier. He's defying what the running back age curve. So those guys are always going to be more expensive, but they're still, if you go after those guys for the championship run, people are also, remember the other side, the selling side is going to feel panicked to sell those guys too. So if you play it right in the right situation, you're going to get a better deal on those guys essentially when they matter most. If I buy Derrick Henry in March, there's a lot of risk leading up to that. The NFL draft, injury. But if I buy him in week 12, and he's healthy, here we go. Right. Like I'm skipping all the risk part.
Yeah, right. And like, I feel like, sure, like, let's say that there's an apples to apples comparison where like in March, you're getting Derrick Henry for a second and or
2 seconds or whatever.
Yeah. Whatever the case may be. And then you have to pay a first when in season happens, right? Like, let's say that's the case. The thing is though, is that if you're just comparing those two deals, you're missing all of the information that you would, that you're gathering, right? For making the deal later. You now know, I'm competitive. My team is healthy. I can get a true boost here, where in March, you have no idea if any of that stuff is happening.
And that Derrick Henry is having the career. Again, we're using him as the example. Sure. It could be Breece Hall, right? Sure. Like, actually, he's still young too with a new contract. I'm trying to think of like an older. Anyway, we'll use Henry for the sake of argument. But you already have skipped all the risk, and that he's locked in and they're on a run. I'm just looking down like the list right here. David Montgomery. David Montgomery.
There you go. That's a good
Let's say he's having one of those seasons. Remember the Jamal Williams season where he just led the league in touchdowns?
Yeah,
let's say he's having one of those. People are going to look at 29-year-old. They're going to be like, I don't want 30-year-old David Montgomery on my roster next year.
Exactly.
And right now, the thought of buying someone like that for a pick, first round pick, seems ridiculous.
Right.
But if he's a top 6, top 5 RB just based on touchdowns alone, and also now that in this stretch run, there's a very good chance that pick's going to be 110, 111,
exactly,
112.
Right.
Whereas now, if things go wrong, that could be like 103, and then that's a horrible trade.
Yeah, I just don't see the benefit generally. I do think that there are some cases where you almost have to do it because your league is just stubborn, and maybe you have some inexperienced managers where they're just like, I'm not going to get rid of this guy no matter what, whatever the case may be. But I think that if you're in a normal dynasty league, it seems like 9 times out of 10, it's just better to make sure you have all that information. Maybe it's a more conservative approach, but I also think that it's the smarter approach because the delta between the 2 deals that you would be getting in March versus week 12 just doesn't seem significant enough in the end, because there's so much variance to rookie drafts anyway. And
it's also going to depend who has the picks. A lot of times by week 11, week 12, just using like that stretch run, maybe, the other managers that are in competition with you have already burned their first round pick. Or and that's why when you get when you're doing a deal and then someone's like, oh, just give me, or, I always say, just throw me a third back or something like that, or even a fourth, just something to sweeten the deal, just in case in a stretch run where I'm competitive with someone for a player, I have that little extra just like cherry on top. So when people, I hear it a lot, third rounders don't matter. They never hit. I'm not using my third rounder to draft, Elijah Surratt or whoever, I'm using that to sweeten the deal so I can get, a DeAndre Swift when he's on a heater in week 9.
For adults with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms, every choice matters. Tremfya offers self-injection or intravenous infusion from the start. Tremfya is administered as injections under the skin or infusions through a vein every 4 weeks, followed by injections under the skin every 4 or 8 weeks. If your doctor decides that you can self-inject Tremfya, proper training is required. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease and adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions, increased risk of infections or lower ability to fight them, and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, get checked for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or need a vaccine. Explore what's possible. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
Lowe's knows Sundays are for football. So tackle your home improvement projects by Saturday and earn your Sunday with great deals on LG and Bosch appliances, select Bounty and Swiffer cleaning products, and more. Then once your to-do list is done, get ready to kick back, relax, and enjoy the game. Shop in-store or online now and earn your Sunday with help from Lowe's, official partner of the NFL.
As you're doing a startup, and I've gotten a lot of questions about like startup approach and such, and like, I have my take for sure, but I'm curious, like last year, for instance, in our league, did you go in saying I want a win now team, or was it more reactive to how others were drafting?
Yeah, it's win now no matter what. Like I said, I'm always under the assumption that the league is probably not going to be around in 5 years. And if it is, hopefully I've given my chance to win it once. And if I'm lucky, maybe twice. I love the idea, and I've done a ton of videos and articles about productive struggle. It's such a cool concept, right? But that's taking in the kumbaya realistic world that like this dynasty league's going to be around forever. And it's fun to do different things, especially different price points. But if I was like in a $1,000 entry league, and I know every year a $500 league, and I know every year I'm gonna have to plunk down that money, I don't want to keep like contributing. So it's win now no matter what. Now again, that doesn't mean just be reckless and draft it completely like a redraft team. I want to give myself a few outs and draft some of the sexy players that people like, like rookies like Cornell Tate or someone like that, just so I can, even someone like Ty Simpson, who seems like a dead pick. I'll get that guy on a win now team because it's almost like having a quasi first round pick in your back pocket.
I mean, the Rams did that in the real NFL.
I know, it's great.
Right? I mean, it's the same.
Listen, I've learned not to question them. Yeah, I've learned not to question them whatsoever. Yeah. But so my theory is, I like, even in our draft, you went quarterback, right? You hammered it home. There's nothing worse in a Superflex Dynasty League than having to deal with the quarterback position. It's a nightmare. Yeah,
it is. At the very least, whenever I do my Superflex rankings, which in my opinion is the hardest type of rankings to do for a customer because every league is just so, especially in redraft. I mean, season-long Superflex, I've talked about this on shows, I think even recently, but like Superflex redraft leagues, you're going to get somewhere where 10 quarterbacks are off the board after the first round and a half, and you're going to get somewhere only 3 are off the board. It's so you have to be very reactive from that perspective. But I think it's different in Dynasty because there is this it's a commodity. It's this, like, you're playing the market value of these players. And if the market says something, like, I know that people will sit there and they'll crap on keep trade cut all day long. And they're like, oh, these values don't, guys, if the market is using that website, I care about what the website is saying.
It's like the American dollar, right? If the world is using the American dollar, we got to use the American dollar. You could say it's fragile, it inflates, it's all this other stuff. But yeah, you're right. Keep, trade, cut. Like, again, you may not agree with it, but that's the agreed upon consensus.
Exactly.
Even on the Sirius XM show, on the Dynasty Hour, that when we were talking, I said consensus rankings. I don't like, I don't want to promote the site without them being a sponsor. That's what Sirius XM said, but they know what I'm talking about here when I say consensus dynasty rankings. That is why do you think that's become like the consensus dynasty rankings? That's a whole conversation.
I don't know. I think it's just because it's structured and algorithmically different,
it's
than
cool
like,
looking site
like,
too.
Yeah. Cause like DLF, I think probably was that for a lot of people for a while. But that was all based off of like startup ADP that they ran, like a handful of startups that McDowell would do every month. I think that the difference here is just the mechanism in which that's been built. But again, like when I do my dynasty rankings, like I have sites like that in mind that I'm checking what the value of these players are, and that influences my rankings because the value component matters, and so if my Superflex rankings, if I'm like, sure, I'll be lower on some guys versus what the market's saying, but if the market's really, really high, I got to bump them up a little bit because that's just the way that dynasty is played. You
said something a minute ago that I've heard you say about how the market, every draft is different with where the quarterbacks go, and I take that with me. I always say, "Oh, JJ had this great point. I think this is one of the smartest points," because I intuitively know it, but I never heard it articulated. Mm-hmm. Basically, I've seen drafts this season. With dynasty and with redraft where the whole line is red with quarterbacks except for Bijan and Gibbs, and then I've seen ones where it's like 2 or 3 guys go, and then like Jaden Daniels is a 2nd round pick, Lamar is like a 1-2 turn pick. So yeah, you're right. It's not that, it's how is the league going to value the quarterbacks? If the first 5 guys are just like, hey, I'm taking quarterbacks, I want them locked in, then that's the price, So I've heard you say it, and I use it, and I give you credit, so don't worry. That's
awesome. Yeah, like I think that like the best players and drafters are the ones that know how to react, right? They know how to look at the board, and they know what's about to come as opposed to what's already happened. And you have to have a feel for that based on just experience, for sure, based on knowing your league, et cetera. And really based on knowing tiers, right? Like where that tier really dries up and where you're not going to be able to get a player later. But in Superflex in particular, and look, you can even apply this to single quarterback leagues, like in season long, right? Where that Josh Allen can give you X amount of VORP, however you want to measure his advantage over the rest of the position, right? That he can give you that. But here's the thing. If you draft Josh Allen in the 2nd round of your redraft league, number one, there's an opportunity cost in doing that, right? Because you're obviously missing out on some really good running backs, especially this year, some running backs. But if you do that, and then Lamar Jackson goes in round 9, Lamar Jackson is by far the better value in that situation. And you just didn't know. Being the first person to take a onesie, especially a quarterback, is one of the riskiest things you can actually do whenever everyone says, oh, it's a safe bet. We know Josh Allen's going to finish here, blah, 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 blah. I agree. Josh Allen's a beast, and he's probably going to be a top 2 quarterback this year because he's done that the last like 6 years. But the problem is, in your particular draft, from a cost standpoint, you run the risk, and just a totality, what the league looks like perspective, you run the risk of devaluing that pick when you're the first person to make that choice.
JJ, I can't believe it. You've been doing this like 12, 14, 15 years at this point, 10 years, and you still have the same like vigor in your voice when you talk about it. I love it.
I love it, man.
Yeah,
That's what we said at the top. It's like, this is our job. And it's if you're not passionate about this stuff, number one, like if you're not like really enthusiastic about fantasy football, someone's going to take your job because this is a competitive space. Everyone wants to do this, and I get it, right? But my gosh, I love this game. Like it's so, because it to me, like especially as I've gotten older, like critical thinking is such a powerful, important part of like the human existence, right? And like we don't get to do it in every single thing that we do. And if you're a parent, right? Like you're I got a 3-year-old, I got a 7-year-old, and there's some things where they're like, I have to critically think about how I'm making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or something.
It's
right?
routine. It's
mundane. Right. And there's a lot of that you go through without your life, but like, I feel very lucky that we have a job and a subject that we're working with where we can get very, very deep with this stuff if you're willing to do so, right?
Yeah. But again, it's very, your passion's oozing out. It's contagious. And when I referee high school basketball, and a lot of times, like the referees are out there, they're like frowning and they're arguing and they're standoffish. That I get coaches always say to me, they say, "You're always like smiling." I said, "Well, I'm enjoying this, man." It's like
great.
Yeah. So that's the kind of energy I get from you. Now back to what we were talking about is what the Josh Allen pick makes sense. It makes sense when you hate everything else on the board, right?
Exactly.
So you get into the third round and you're like, oh,
and there's a dip. Yeah.
Like, I really don't want. I mean, I like Devontae Smith, but you're like, I really don't want to take Devontae Smith in the third round. I'll just take Josh Allen because it's 38. It's 28 points, in a game.
It's safe. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Versus Devontae Smith, I'm going to find 2 rounds later, I'm going to get Devontae Adams or whoever,
The really frustrating part with this is that in a more casual league where there's going to be some falling values at running back and wide receiver because people aren't doing the same research, et cetera, et cetera. That's actually when you probably should go earlier round quarterback and like take that shot because number one, this is what's going on in best ball right now too, where the back end QB1s, the high end QB2s are going way earlier than they've gone historically. I mean, it started to happen last year in best ball, but them going earlier means that the higher end quarterbacks actually become more valuable, right? Because if you get Josh Allen and the absolute inverse of what I was talking about before, if you get Josh Allen in round 3 and then all of a sudden up until Brock Purdy is gone at the end of round 5, then you got a massive value in drafting Josh Allen there, right? Because people are spending almost, very close to the same kind of draft capital and allocation on Brock Purdy, who is fine, but he's not Josh Allen, as Josh Allen and what you got with Allen. So like, it's about, it's just like, you want to go into a more casual environment and be like, oh, I don't need to get quarterback because it's going to be easy to pick one off late, which I do think late round quarterback is going to probably be a pretty good strategy this year. But like, it's just there's a lot of that like context and individualized like thinking about that particular league that needs to go on for it to dictate what your draft strategy really should be.
Yeah, you just said this, and I'm looking at the ADP of the quarterbacks, and the elite quarterbacks are about 2 to 3 rounds cheaper than they've ever been, right? Maybe sometimes in some cases 4. But the floor, the price of the depth of the quarterbacks, and that's a function of after the first 3 or 4 quarterbacks that no one's really seeing a difference between, or maybe even deeper. Like someone says, yeah, I do like Dak, I do like Justin Herbert, but if I can get the spike weeks from a Baker Mayfield and Tyler Shook, it's fine. Especially in best ball where you never have to call the shot, right? Like that's the worst part about fantasy football. And you get a gazillion start-sit questions. It's like, do I start Jordan Love with the great matchup, or do I start, Jackson Dart who's playing a tough defense? You're like, gee, I have no idea.
Yeah.
And then you're just kind of guessing, and then you give people all these caveats and percentages. But I think that's what happens when you don't have to call the shot and you just get Sam Darnold's 27-point game. I think that's the advantage, and that's why. And also remember, even though we call them onesie positions, tight end and quarterback, that in best ball it essentially is a 2-quarterback league, right? Everyone needs minimum 2.
Yeah, I mean, the position dries up, right? Like that
you need
people, The panic in best ball is really, I think, what drives the high end to mid range QB2 up in price. Is that in our season long league, who cares? Those guys are going to go undrafted. Like Baker Mayfield in a regular home league this year is not going to get drafted more than likely. In a lot of those leagues. Now you got to react if because I'm in a home league, a local league here. That's 14 teams, and I know that people are going to take backup quarterbacks, so I have to at least be a little bit careful about getting too out of control with not drafting a quarterback because the waiver wire is actually is thin. But in 95% of leagues, like those guys won't go. But in best ball right now, it's a completely different beast. Which is, have you found, like, since you're doing the radio stuff and you're talking to people and it's just a much different dynamic than what I'm probably experiencing. Have you found that it's been a little bit obnoxious about how best ball has seeped into the way that people are looking at season long as well? Has that been a thing that or has it been pretty separate?
No, you nailed it, man. You nailed it, because best ball is, by the way, when you're talking about just traditional leagues, is that Yahoo did a study, and even in seasonal leagues, 1.9 quarterbacks per team on Yahoo leagues. So again, I use Yahoo because that's where a lot of, like, let's say people that are more casual about it, right? Yeah. So and with best ball is seeped in, and best ball is like the greatest way to prepare for your season long draft. But what I think was, and guys like you were talking about this, doing on videos and on content, is that it really is two different games, right?
It is.
But I mean, the players go in a similar order, but the roster construction is a little bit different. But you're right, man. The way we play best ball. See, I fell into this about 4 years ago because I've always been, not, by the way, when I used to say I played in 50 best ball leagues, that used to be a lot. Now it's now I'm like, I barely play. Right. So it's funny. The way I was playing best ball, I was bringing into redraft, and because the strategy is so different that you have access to the waiver wire and that you have to do start sits, it was screwing up my redraft leagues, and I was losing for a little while until I again adjusted. So yes, we are seeing those two types of strategies merge when they really should be talked about as two separate things.
I think it's on us as analysts to make sure we're making that separation for people too. And I get annoyed, like straight up. I'm like, I'll tell the analysts sometimes too. I'm like, bro, you're talking about this as if like this is the strategy that people are deploying and using in season long, but it's not the same. It's not the same at all. Like you can look. I think best ball is really great for understanding, like you said, within the position where guys should go and like where guys are generally ranked. Like you could probably, because best ball is pretty sharp, especially this time of year, you could probably use best ball ADP as straight up positional rankings and have an edge, right? Over what, your buddy from accounting who doesn't do any research is going to show up in August with some list that is just very generic and isn't very helpful. But yeah, where these guys go overall is really the problem.
Yeah, and I think also I've always adopted that, just say like in a contained best ball, because when we talk best ball now, there's also, everyone assumes it's these giant contests where there's hundreds of thousands. Right. I still do a lot of best ball where it's like, the smaller groups. I play in the big tournaments too, but like where only the top two get a cash reward. And I still think in those type of leagues, you got to push up the running backs that definitely have jobs, because you don't, the volatile wide receivers, you don't want them in your traditional home league. But
doesn't matter as much though in best ball.
Exactly. You never have to call the shot. What's the worst part about fantasy football? I've said it before, is deciding, which wide receiver 3 and 4 to choose from. Like when someone says, hey, should I start Michael Pittman this week or Matthew Golden? I have no idea, but I don't have to call that shot. But that's why I'm taking like a Breece Hall in round 2 in best ball if I'm picking towards the end of the round, because I just want running backs I know have jobs, 3-down work rule, that type of stuff.
For adults with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms, every choice matters. Tremfya offers self-injection or intravenous infusion from the start. Tremfya is administered as injections under the skin or infusions through a vein every 4 weeks, followed by injections under the skin every 4 or 8 weeks. If your doctor decides that you can self-inject Tremfya, proper training is required. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease and adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions, increased risk of infections or lower ability to fight them, and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, get checked for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or need a vaccine. Explore what's possible. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more, or visit tremfyaradio.com.
Lowe's knows Sundays are for football. So tackle your home improvement projects by Saturday and earn your Sunday with great deals on LG and Bosch appliances, select Bounty and Swiffer cleaning products, and more. Then once your to-do list is done, get ready to kick back, relax, and enjoy the game. Shop in-store or online now and earn your Sunday with help from Lowe's, official partner of the NFL.
All right, I want to go through some scenarios across the league right now where we have teammates that are being drafted relatively close to each other, and I want to see how you feel one way or another about these guys, because I think this is this number one, this is a question, like every week when I ask for mailbag questions, it's always scenarios like this where they're, someone's like, which player out of this backfield or which player, amongst this wide receiver room do you like more? So we'll start out with probably, one of the bigger ones this year is Luther Burden versus Rome Odunze.
how sick is it going to be when either one of these guys has a good week one? And because this is like split the country, right? I mean, politics unites us more than the Luther versus Rome thing at this point. Yeah. I'm Team Rome, and all of the under the hood smart metrics favor Luther Burden here, but I don't know. He just had longer chemistry with the Roma Dunes. I'm talking about Caleb Williams, of course. Mm-hmm. Now, he wasn't Ben Johnson's pick. He inherited him, and I do think that means something. Luther and Colston were his picks. But, I mean, those first 4 weeks before the injury, they would look good. What was he, about a 15, 18 point per game? Great. Yeah. So, man, I'm also a little biased. I made a bad trade where I acquired Rome, so I kind of need this to happen, or else, a lot of things are going to go wrong for me. But I'm scared to death to draft Luther Burden. I'm scared to death not to draft Luther Burden.
I think that's a healthy way to look at it. Like, it really like comes down to like, if you're in a shallower league where you start 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, 1 tight end, no flex, let's say, just something like really, really shallow. I think that going after players like Luther Burden is easier because you're not going to have to rely on them and you can just shoot for the ceiling. I'm a Burden guy in general, so I'm just going to get him. But there's a very clear downside case here, like very, very clear downside case. Are you straight up going Rome over Burden, or is this a cost thing?
I don't have to, right? Like I don't, and it's so hard for me to say, if you have to pick in a vacuum, which one would you pick? Yeah. And I just don't have to make that choice. But I mean, if I'm forced to, and you're asking me a question, I'm going to say Rome, but I don't feel good about this pick at all. It's like, it's terrible. Now, this reminds me a lot of Travion Henderson last year, right? All of a sudden he was a 4th round pick as a rookie. Then he was a 3rd. And then the NFFC, they were taking him in the 2nd round. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. I was getting scared that people that plunking down $1,500 for drafts are taking him. Then I saw him go with the 1-2 turn. So I'm getting that same FOMO confusion about Luther Burden. But I guess straight up I'll take Rome, but I have no confidence in that pick.
I think there's a very real chance by the time August hits, Luther Burden is like a 2-3 turn type player. You know what I mean? Like, and that scares the crap out of me as one of the biggest Burden truthers out there, because I loved him as a prospect, all of that. To be clear, I don't think that in all of these scenarios, because I don't have a player like I still like drafting Adunze. I still think that Adunze is a pretty good pick because I recognize all of the different outcomes that can happen with the Bears offense this year, or at least I'm hoping to recognize. And I think that there is an outcome where Adunze is a better player and a more productive player than what the market's suggesting.
And you notice, JJ, like when you pick Luther Burden in a draft room, you get the hipster high five pick. You get the good pick. You get the good pick in the chat. Yeah. When you pick Adunze, it's like, next. Nobody's going to congratulate you and say good pick in the chat.
Yeah. Well, do you feel the same way then about Brian Thomas versus Parker Washington? Is this a very similar situation for you?
This is the same thing, except that BTJ. Oh yeah, you're right. It really is the same thing, except BTJ just has stink all over him at this point, right?
At least Adunze had the split last year, right?
And Parker Washington also has the anchor pulling him backwards or underneath based on that he was a day 3 real NFL pick. Mm-hmm. And that, but all of the, if you're a coach speak player, I tend to favor coach. Like when certain coaches say things, it seems like Parker Washington's in, but there's a lot more. I would say it's a lot more crowded, but there's still a lot of options over in Chicago too. I think Parker Washington, given that was he about a 5th or probably 6th round pick at this point? I've seen him go in the 6th. Yeah, I've taken him in the 6th or maybe 7th if I got lucky. I think that's more like you can swallow that cost a little bit to get Burden. You just said there's no way Parker Washington's going up to the 2-3 turn. It's just not happening. Yeah. So it's a little bit of a different conversation because you have your core 5 players already set when you draft Parker Washington. So I want to take the gamble on Parker Washington. I like what I saw. I like all the forward momentum with him, and who likes him? Trevor Lawrence. That's who targets him. So I'm more bullish on the success of Washington than I would be on Burden, even though there's more upside clearly with Luther Burden. And Brian Thomas, he seems like he's going to be one of the best values if he hits this year.
So I want to kind of move on. It's further down the list, but I do think it's an interesting conversation because there was a little bit of a discussion. Dwayne McFarland sent a tweet about Michael Wilson versus and Parker Washington over the weekend or late last week. So we have Marvin Harrison Jr. and Michael Wilson. Michael Wilson has been falling a little bit. So there's a little bit more of a gap than there was like 2 or 3 months ago in their ADP. Do you have a strong lean there? And do you feel like the Michael Wilson situation is very like Parker Washington, or do you think there are some differences there?
Well, this is a whole new regime in Arizona now, right? It's like, so that this is similar to where I said about Roma Odunze, where they're happy to have Marvin Harrison, but they didn't take, right? There is a difference when you inherit someone versus when you made the pick, and same obviously for Michael Wilson. But man, I thought I was being contrarian in early draft season, taking Michael Wilson ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr., but it seems like that this is another one of those 50-50 splits. I still think, Marvin Harrison, you have to look at the pedigree.
Yeah.
It can't be this bad. The guy was, it's a lesson learned in Dynasty too, JJ. Guy was wide receiver 4 before he took a snap. Man, that was a mistake. But, I think I would still leave lean Marv. But man, I've gone back and forth with these guys too. And it seems like, you can kind of get them both. They go similar pricing, but if you're, drafting on the hook and you're creating these stacks, you can try to get them both, but Marv is the answer.
Yeah, I get so worried about Michael Wilson. My comp for Michael Wilson, not as like a player, but just like a season comp of what he did in 2025 is 2024 Jerry Jeudy.
Oh, that's good.
That's my fear, right?
That's good.
Because we saw the split with Jeudy and Winston, right, that year, Jameis Winston, and we saw Jeudy have better numbers when Cedric Tillman was out that year, like when injuries around him occurred. That's when he saw some more of his spiked weeks. And the same thing kind of happened with Michael Wilson last year with Marvin Harrison Jr. Like Michael Wilson with Jacoby, like I think the split has always been for people, Michael Wilson with Jacoby Brissett. But really, when Jacoby Brissett was under center and Marvin Harrison ran 80% or more of their routes, so he was not, didn't have appendicitis and all these other issues. There was only 3 games of that happening last year where Marvin Harrison Jr. ran 80% or more of their routes with Jacoby Brissett under center, and then obviously Michael Wilson playing. Michael Wilson didn't score double-digit points in any of those games.
Yeah, that's revealing.
I do think Michael Wilson is like better than what we expect, what we saw from him the first handful of years of his career. With that being said, the difference to me with him and Parker Washington, this is what Dwayne was kind of talking about, because Dwayne brought up very, very, like in a smart way, like he should bring this up, is that when we've seen these players who haven't done anything historically and then they have these spiked, chunks of a season, how do they then perform? And Dwayne was basically saying like, hey guys, these guys usually suck the next year. Like it usually is a blip. And my point with Parker Washington was that, because look, this isn't an anti-Brian Thomas take.
But you're pro Parker, right? You're pro Parker Washington?
I think that Parker Washington, the difference between him and Michael Wilson is that his peripherals with Jacoby Myers and Brian Thomas playing last year were excellent. All like I made the comment that the difference between Parker Washington and Michael Wilson is that they both needed an injury for something more to happen, right? The difference though is that Parker Washington, the injury to Travis Hunter, was what allowed the Jags to realize what they had in Parker Washington, whereas the injury to Marvin Harrison Jr. allowed Michael Wilson to just get gobbles and gobbles of volume, and he wasn't efficient. His yards per route run wasn't very strong last year. It wasn't that amazing, whereas Parker Washington, in a really good ecosystem and environment with good competition, was thriving at times, and he had a really good yards per out run rate, and he was really, so like that backbone makes me feel more comfortable with Parker Washington than Michael Wilson, but it scares me too, because obviously, Michael Wilson showed us that he had a really high ceiling. It's just that I'm trying to just be as rational as I can with that Wilson situation.
See, goes back to what we talked about in the beginning of this podcast, where you have to have a process, but be willing, when there's nuances involved. Now, Dwayne made the factual statement that these guys usually just go off the map after they have a spike month, right? And you're saying, and then you kind of logicked it out where this is why Parker Washington doesn't fit that exact pattern right here. So
much at least, I can certainly see I think that the answer to a lot of the Jacksonville stuff is to draft Trevor Lawrence, just capture it that way. Or if you're playing best ball, get one of these guys in as many drafts as you can, or stack them, whatever. I think I'm going to get my exposure, and maybe this is a cop out, but I'm going to get a lot more of my exposure to the Jags wide receiver room in best ball than I will in season long, because I think it could be a headache week to week.
You don't have to call the shot, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'm even getting some of the Travis Hunter stuff too. I always that's a pick you get laughed at when you just going back to the Cardinals wide receivers. You're assuming Jacoby Brissett week 1 starter here. Like I'm
not. That's the other problem too.
All right.
Yeah. That's certainly another part of the variance of that profile. And I think Carson Beck's going to start at some point this year. I think there's a better chance than not. Right.
What's the under/over on games started in JJ Zacharyson's sports book for Carson Beck starts?
I would say 5.5.
I was going to say 4.5. I'll take the over on 4.5, and I'd still take. I'd say probably half the season, right?
Yeah, around. Like I think that there's a very real possibility that happens, and you're already running into the issue right now with the contract stuff with Brissett. So like, there's that was why I think even in our 4 quarterback league, I took Carson Beck, and he fell to like the second round in that league, and I grabbed him because there's going to be an opportunity for him to do something, and even those players, because like Arizona, realistically is probably gonna be bad this year. Then they'll have a high pick next year, and more than likely going to take a quarterback. Like that's the we can all see this.
That's likely,
right?
But the Tyler Shook outcome is possible too.
That could happen, or Carson Beck shows something, and now they have a trade asset or something that they could deal, like dangle and try to work with. So like. Yes, but like that would be like, I think Carson Beck is a problem for Marvin Harrison Jr. and Michael Wilson and Jeremiah Love and what that Arizona offense might do. I've leaned Marvin Harrison Jr. more comfortably just because at least we can tell a story that they used him poorly and he had the backbone, like you said, of just being a really, he obviously hasn't lived up to expectation. He's been okay enough. He's played more like a mid to late first round pick, as a player so far. And not the elite, what we expect out of a top 5 pick. But, what if they unlock him? And there's at least more of that pedigree that makes me feel more comfortable about drafting him.
Isn't there a 15-20% chance that Carson Beck is good enough where the Arizona gets the 3rd pick and the quarterbacks go 1-2 and they take Jeremiah Smith, something?
It's possible.
It's
possible. So. Yeah, there are other outs, which is why I wanted to throw, in my Superflex league, especially in rookie drafts this year, where the running backs and wide receivers were just weak, you get to the second round. I'm most of these second rounds, especially mid to late second round, I have a lot of Carson Beck just because I don't think he's going to hit. It's just, this is the game theory side of things,
Yeah. I think you and I have previously talked about, but I would take Carson Beck in a rookie draft as high as 112.
I understand. Yeah. I get the logic.
Because the minute he starts, there's something you could do there. And Lord forbid, he's got a 250-2 with no interceptions in that first game. Yeah. Now you're talking about a top 20 dynasty quarterback, but there'll be pushback because if Arizona doesn't have a lot of wins, then you're right. There's always that threat that he's going to get Josh Rosen.
Yeah, and I think it's very obvious us saying this. Like, that's not the likely outcome. Right. The likely outcome is he sucks or he doesn't, he just doesn't do much. But that's the likely outcome for a lot of the second round wide receivers anyway.
And it's a likely outcome for even high pedigree quarterbacks that they're more likely to fail than not. Like Cam Ward, like if he wasn't the 101, you'd be like, right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Very
all right, let's go to Pittsburgh and look at that backfield. I'm curious how you look at Jaylen Warren versus Rico Dowdle. We'll get a couple more of these in.
Okay. Yeah. Super quick is that I'm nervous about Jaylen Warren. He was supposed to be the alpha guy last year, gets thrown out of the way by Kenny Gainwell, more or less, who's an efficiency monster, right? Jaylen Warren's a good player. Like, you want him. He's perfectly good. But Rico Dowdle, they bring him in. They don't bring in anybody else of note. Rico Dowdle, familiarity with Mike McCarthy, trusts him, right? So I would say that this is probably a classic split and that both guys are solid picks, but I want Rico Dowdle here, and I think that the market mostly agrees. He's more likely to have more touchdowns. I would say more carries. And again, though, Jaylen Warren's a good player, but every time we think it's Jaylen Warren season, it's like, oh yeah, but this happens. Oh yeah, but this happens. So although Jaylen Warren, I know he's got his fans, and I'd be happy to have him on my team, this is Rico Dowdle. I think Rico Dowdle was like a week winner last year. I don't remember ever saying Jaylen Warren week winner.
And then you mentioned Kenneth Gainwell. I think I saw an interesting take from you on social media. Let's hear the Bucky Irving versus Kenneth Gainwell.
Yeah, I mean, Kenneth Gainwell was about 4.7 yards every time he touches the football. Do you remember that game that nobody knew that he was going to be replacing Jalen Warren? It was an international game. You woke up and Kenneth Gainwell basically broke fantasy, broke DFS. Bucky Irving was a 4th-round pick who had a good year, very similar to like Damian Pierce a couple years ago. I like Bucky Irving, but man, there was questions last year when he was going, Bucky Irving was going in the 2nd round of fantasy drafts. Could he hold up? The answer was no. I like to see these guys do it. Who's Bucky Irving, right? Like he had his best year when Liam Cohen was there. Look, then Liam Cohen goes to Jacksonville and Travis Etienne has his good year. Bucky Irving's great, good player, but Kenneth Gainwell was given the motherlode contract right here, $7 million a year. You know what I'm saying? For a guy of that, but it's more than we thought he was going to get. I think that Kenneth Gainwell, I'm betting on him to be more productive in fantasy football than Bucky Irving. And I think that this thing is a 50-50 split where I think that the general market's looking at it as like a 70-30 Bucky thing.
There's a very real chance that Bucky Irving is a between the 20s guy, and that's terrible for fantasy football, right? Where Kenneth Gainwell is the pass catcher, and he's been, he obviously played that role last year very well. And Sean Tucker plays goal line stuff and gets some goal line stuff. Like that's a very real possibility too. And then all of a sudden that leaves Bucky Irving, and not only that, the workload concerns I think are only validated by these injuries that he's gotten over the last year, and that he's coming back from right now. Like that's only enhanced the feeling that he's not going to necessarily be the bell cow that he was down the stretch, during his rookie year.
Yeah, I mean, when we started doing drafts, JJ, in February, Bucky Irving was like a 2-3 turn pick and then just falling. It was even settling in like that late 4th round, something like that right now. He's like, I mean, on DraftKings, he's falling even more just because of the injury stuff. Like he's like firmly in the 5th. Yeah. I go down when I do my draft rankings. I go to for drafting. I go down to Bucky Irving and I cross him off. And I have Gainwell on literally every single team because again, I give them a 50-50 shot to compete here, and the market's treating it like it's not that. So Gainwell to the moon this year that'll be, I guess, what we call a flag plant, right?
Yes. Well, that's what I was going to say. The last question I want to ask you is a bold take for what we could see in 2026. Would that be your bold take?
No, that's not bold. So it's funny. I said, I talked a little Gainwell, with somebody. They said, "Oh, that's vanilla ice cream." I said, "Vanilla ice cream? That's not a vanilla ice cream take." So I want to ask you, do you want medium spice? You want real spice? I mean,
give me the real spice.
Okay, the real spice. And I'm not saying this just to sensationalize. I really do believe Tank Dell, the wide receiver who missed all of last year, who's by all means coming back, is set up to be a top 25 wide receiver in fantasy football. I would even say maybe higher. He was about a 15 point per game before his catastrophic injury. I don't think the rookies that the Houston Texans drafted, they looked fine, but they didn't look like they were going to be the future of the franchise. Yeah. Nico Collins gets his extension. He's the true alpha, but Tank Dell showed that he could exist. Now, if he's even back to even somewhat with what he was, CJ Stroud had a real connection with him. My hot take is that you could pick the round you want Tank Dell. He's coming back, leader of the locker room type of guy. I'm going Tank Dell is a top 25 wide receiver in 2026 fantasy football.
Yeah, that's spicy. I mean, it really comes down to the recovery, though, so I get it. Makes sense. Alan, this was amazing. It was really great to have you on. Let everyone know where they can find you, what you're working on, and all that good stuff. I was part of the Boomer hack on Twitter, where they stole my Twitter account, and you were generous enough to push out my to let people know. So it's Alan _Seslowsky. I'm now part of the dreaded _ community on Twitter. And, I didn't have a huge following on Twitter. I had a few thousand people, but I spent 10 years building that damn account up, JJ. And now I'm starting it from scratch. And I know you're saying this guy clicked on a link. These hackers, they're getting very clever how they do it. They're getting clever, man. They're getting good. It's scary out there.
I think I was a lesson for you. You're not clicking on any links at this point.
Oh, I don't click a thing. I get random DMs from people, and I'm like, I know what's going on here. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then you go and you look at their profile, and it's just all crypto stuff. And you're like, and there's something happened here.
So also, I'll promote SiriusXM satellite radio. I'm on channel 87. Up until July, I do this Dynasty show 1 to 3 Eastern, and then after that, we'll be on in the Rotowire slot doing traditional radio. If you have satellite, channel 87 is the fantasy sports channel, or anytime on the Twitter. And so let's say you just, before we go here, I want your hot take, because I know you're not a hot take artist.
I'm not a hot take artist.
I know, so this is uncomfortable for you.
I think my hot take right now, you know what? Since we were talking about it, I'll say that Jalen Waddle finishes as a top 8. Is that cool?
Ooh,
top 8.
say
Why
it.
not?
Say it.
I'll say I'll plant the flag a little bit on Jalen Waddle. Spoiler: he'll be a player to target in the draft guide this year.
Will you be an extra pain if the player you traded me for, Eli Stowers, is a top 8 wide receiver?
Process over results. Process over results.
You're what my grandmother would call a mensch, JJ. That is a very big compliment. Anyone out there, you can Google it. It's Yiddish.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate all of you for listening too. Make sure you're checking out the new lateround.com, becoming a member, checking out the members hub, taking a look at the late round draft guide that will be out July 10th this year. Need a little bit of extra time. It's usually July 1st, but I needed a little bit extra time just given all the changes going on at late round, but that will be out on July 10th. A lot of new stuff in there that I'm very excited about. So check it out, lateround.com. Otherwise, everyone, as usual, thanks for tuning in.
Wasabi is purpose-built to free your business from skyrocketing storage costs and fees. Wasabi is the go-to provider for professional and collegiate sports teams around the world. Check out Wasabi's AI-enabled intelligent media storage, Wasabi Air, to the industry's only cloud storage service with triple protection against cyber criminals. Wasabi, driving innovation in data storage for up to 80% less than market competition. Try for free at wasabi.com. Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage, proud partner of iHeart Podcast Network.
Lowe's knows Sundays are for football, so tackle your home improvement projects by Saturday and earn your Sunday with great deals on LG and Bosch appliances, select Bounty and Swiffer cleaning products, and more. Then once your to-do list is done, get ready to kick back, relax, and enjoy the game. Shop in store or online now and earn your Sunday with help from Lowe's, official partner of the NFL.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.